All right, welcome back to the Align Team Podcast. Today we have Eric Eckhardt, who is our official or unofficial director of lead gen, director of run up the damn hill and do your job.
Hell yeah.
And we were just rapping about, we're going to go into what, the election, Justin Timberlake,
Absolutely.
concealed carry in New Jersey as a realtor.
And farming.
We
Homesteads.
talked about, homesteading. What else did we touch on? Oh, that girl that was viral on social. I'm not going to bring that up.
Yeah. That will pass on.
Yeah, but it's funny. So you were talking about the I think it was your aunt brought in the gun safety.
Yeah, she's a parole officer. She's
Yeah.
been in law enforcement her whole life, and she her base was always Newark, so she would always see when I posted like going in or like some of the stuff I have to deal with, and she put it in mind. She was like, "You should be able to conceal carry."
Yeah.
And it never crossed my mind, but I was like, that sounds like a great vibe on Instagram, like the concealed carry agent. Here, sign this lease or don't.
Woke agent carries a pistol.
Yeah. It's 6-shooter. I'd probably go to 6-shooter.
Like a revolver.
Yeah.
That'd be incredible.
Old school.
But it's funny when you were bringing that up, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, well, in New Jersey though, I think concealed carry came around in 2021 or so. It was like a post-COVID thing. And I didn't even know you could do it until I had a client down in Colts Neck that they went and got it, post-COVID, and they both had their concealed carry permits. So I thought that was interesting. And when you were just talking about it, I haven't heard any stories of this, but I would hate to be the first person in New Jersey with a concealed carry that actually pulled the trigger for some reason, safety or not, because I have a feeling that like you're gonna be in trouble. You're gonna have problems.
Yeah. In this state, I don't know if I would, as great or as safe as it sound. I mean, I was thinking back to the first time I went to one of the properties, one of the REOs we had, where they were supposed to be locked up and the doors just wide open. And I'm sitting here in the middle of Newark and I'm like, this is probably not the one I'm going into today.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. I guess you'd want to feel safe, but I think there's also safety in just like not going into a property, not dealing with like, we've had tenants who like get real rowdy. Most of the time they're not going to do anything, but I guess you just have to worry.
Know.
Yeah, you never worry.
Well, I think too is like it depends on the time of day too. If you're in like if you're a real estate agent, you're going to an area that you feel is unsafe. I always felt it was best to go in like 9 a.m., 10 a.m., like do more of a morning thing. I mean, we see it. We're in a lot of. I mean, we've sold in some of the worst parts of the state, northern and central.
Yeah. That deal we had where we sold those 5, it was like 3 families in Newark, West Side. We did the city inspections, and the city inspectors were like, we're going out there before 11. Like they don't come out there after 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there, I'm like, I've been out here all week, last week, hanging around, talking to neighbors.
Yeah.
And then again, you don't necessarily feel unsafe, but I guess the people who live there, that work there, they see it more often. I've always had the mindset of like, just treat people with respect, man. Like selling real estate, starting in Brooklyn. I sold in Bed-Stuy and Bushwick, which historically were rough neighborhoods. People don't, like, they're not generally bothering. I think there's like probably 1% of the population that will like try and start problems with you. But most people, like, they're just trying to go about their day. They want to be handled with respect.
Yeah. And I feel like regardless of like how bad certain neighborhoods get, there's still that sense of community and people look out for each other on the street, and they know that it's pretty easy to see that, we're real estate agents and whatnot. So it's very rare that, regardless of where we've been in an unsafe situation. And I think having a gun on my hip would just make things a lot worse.
Yeah, like that doesn't send a good vibe. And it's like, hey, can you come sign this for the CO inspection and you're carrying? It's like, yeah, they're not going to feel good.
Yeah.
The funny thing is I had the Charger back in Brooklyn. Obviously, was always in a suit. So I think people always thought I was some detective. I would get that all the time. Like, are you a cop? Like, no, I'm trying to sell your 6 family.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, 2008 or 2009, David DeVoe and I were on South 18th Street in Newark. And this is before, like, they ended up, a lot of the buildings were boarded up, and then they ended up plowing a lot of them. Now it's a much nicer area, and you have a lot of, like, newer construction, 2 families that were developed and whatnot. But during that time, the vacant buildings are a lot of times where, like, if somebody was, doing drugs or whatever it may be, they're hanging in those properties.
Yeah.
So Dave and I get on South 18th Street. I think it was a property he actually owned. It was a 3-family. And we're sitting in his BMW 3 Series, and we're both in suits with ties on, because I was a suit and tie guy back in the day. And a guy came up and he knocked on our window, and he's like, "What do you need?" And he's like, we're just realtors, man.
Yeah.
And Dave completely like diffused the scenario, and they thought we were cops. That's what he was. He's like, "I thought you were cops just sitting here." And Dave was like, "No, we're realtors. We gotta go into that house, and we're waiting for the locksmith to cut the padlock." But no, that's it's just be careful.
Yeah, yeah. I remember 398 Crescent Street. I'll never forget that first 6 family I sold in East New York had been vacant for like 10 years.
Yeah.
And the seller hadn't been inside the property in so long that when we went in, it was just unbelievable the amount of stuff in there. There was like a big pool of blood that we thought like something must have happened back in the day. But it's the nature of real estate. Like that made me realize like that's where opportunity is.
Yeah.
And you'll see it with investors that want that true value add. Like the worse it is, the better off it is for them. And I think that's what's drawn me into that investment side, whether it's a 2-family, a 6-family, you're changing the neighborhood. Like
Right.
no one, I don't care who you are, where you're from, no one wants a vacant property on the block. No one
Yep.
wants, whether it's a 6-family or 2. So it's a good way to like put your little footprint on the neighborhood and it's good change in my
Yeah.
opinion.
No, and there's a lot of there's a lot of local homeowners there that benefit from, real estate values climbing and stuff
Yeah.
like that through the neighborhood, and also the quality of tenant that comes in with, I owned some Class C, Class D stuff out in Jamestown, New York, and we did a really good job of making sure that we provided inexpensive housing, but that was like clean. It's crazy how many landlords out there that we dealt with that, we'd hear stories of them just not even treating bed bugs when they would come through and stuff like that, like some bad Class D stuff. So we were of that mindset where let's charge the same amount. Let's not deal with deferred maintenance. Let's keep up with the building as things break and everything like that. And because of that, we always had a wait list with tenants where we could, make sure that we had well-qualified tenants coming into the properties, and that just enhanced the overall experience for the rest of the people in the building.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always struggled with that idea when it comes to, you hear it a lot in New York City of like, hey, I don't make enough money or it's rent stabilized. I can't really keep up the property. But I like to think the good in people, if you provide good service, right, in any business, you provide a good product, you're going to get good people.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's going to be some that take advantage of it or people that I'd say don't necessarily see the value in what you're providing.
Yeah.
But that's the same as like when you cold call someone that tells you to go fly a kite. Like the cold call's not for you.
Yeah.
The cold call's for the one that's going to see the value in it. So I think the important thing is just like acknowledging that, providing it for the people that deserve it, and keep yourself away from the bad eggs.
Yeah, and I feel like that too brings me to like the thought of, we had a listing, I want to say it was down in Keyport or somewhere in northern Monmouth County. I forget the town. It might have been Highlands. But it was a carriage house, or it was a garage that had a 1-bedroom, like 550 square foot, one bed on top of it. And it was like $1,600 last year. We had 65 applications come in on it. And it ended up going to like a nurse who makes 85 or 95 grand a year, had perfect credit and everything like that. But it made me think of, there were so many applications that came through that they either worked locally at a restaurant, they were servers, they were, whatever it may be. 65 of them got, or 64 of them got declined. And that housing does not come up often. So there's like truly that affordable housing shortage is insane right now in New Jersey. And I think too, like we have some friends that own, rent controlled affordable housing in Jersey City, and they built new construction. I think that, with the grant money and stuff around that, there's definitely a huge market for that. And
you're going to get me going on something that I feel very passionate about. People developing brand new high-end quality construction on the waterfront and getting tax abatements is the wrong direction, right? Like we need housing for the middle class. We don't build starter homes anymore, right? Any new construction single family home is 750, 800K up.
Right.
That's not the middle class. I mean, some could argue that it is, but that's what I really think our government, like if we're going to have the government try and get in there and provide for the people, it's like, hey, provide some type of tax relief or abatement for the developer who's going to build the affordable housing. And I almost don't even want to call it affordable housing. I just think it's I think middle class housing, right? Like you don't need the $2,500, $3,000 rent. Maybe you can buy with that $1,500, $1,600 rent, but there's got to be some abatement in place, because the sad thing is those developers that want to provide that, they just can't compete on the open market unless you get a sweetheart deal.
And I think of too, so my mom lives in Florence, South Carolina, and she lives in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home that was probably built within the last 5 years or something. But it's built on slabs, so there's no basement because it's not as common down there. It's about 1,400 square feet. The center has cathedral ceilings, and I would venture to say it cost the developer, he probably built it for $150 a foot. So you figure, you buy the land, then you build that. And that type of housing does not exist either in the burbs up here. And I really think that, like, if you take a town like Lebanon or Clinton, or down by you, if you push a little further west past, Princeton or something out that way where there's stuff's a little less developed. I would love to see them allow, they did it up in Bud Lake in like the early 2000s, but allow homes to be built on those 1/8 acre lots. And let's put up inexpensive properties like that could be rented or sold. They don't need a basement. They don't need a garage. They can just literally be built for cheap. And it'll be, that $2,500 3-bed 2-bath that gets people into a good school system with their kids and whatnot. And then I think that too, I personally hate rent control because of some of the ways the laws are are just insane in Hoboken. But I do think that having like, if you're starting at a market rent and then increasing in a way that's affordable to keep up with the way salaries go versus what we see in Hoboken, where it's like, okay, it was $3,800 this year, now it's $4,900. We just raised your rent by that, and if you don't like it, move out. There's somebody else that's going to move in behind you. I think that component of it wouldn't be great for what we're talking about with that middle class or that lower class. But I do think that zoning in these, you talk about homesteading, talk about farmlands, let the density build up a little bit. I know that it's not exactly what the neighbors may like per se, but there's such a demand for it. We're starting to see it a little more in Flemington. Hoboken Brownstone Company is building on, was it 202 or 206? It's going to be multifamily though. It's not like conducive to living with children like you and I have.
As you see it too in like the 55 and older. I feel like there's a lot of new development in that. And then when you get down by me, Middlesex County, even further south, they're very affordable. I mean, $200-300 grand. And one can argue like that generation isn't the one that's hurting for the cash in hand for purchases. One thing I noticed, especially after COVID, remember when they started providing retail rents, or they were giving retail tenants the ability to like pay per what they were making. I just don't understand how we can't make sense of that. We have so much data when it comes to like what people make, income and all that, that I think something along that sense where you have housing that is proportionate to what you're making, paying rent proportionate to what you can provide. I remember when I first moved to Brooklyn, was it 2012, 2013, the stat of like people spending at least a third of their income on housing. It blew my mind because I was just like, what? I was like, how are you guys making it happen? People make it happen, but it just feels like you're just skating by the teeth, man. You can't have anything happen.
I remember like you have somebody making $6,000 a month. So that's 72,000. And you have 2,000 a month of that, $24,000 a year, right? Is my math right on that? Yeah. Going to rent, to housing.
Yeah. And it's like, I mean, I guess you have to kind of like sacrifice where you can, right? Not eating lunch out every day, but you still got to eat, right? You have to have some fun. And if you're in the city, I mean, shit, the reason you move to the city is to have a little fun, to get away from mom and dad and do all that. But it's interesting. I think again, I believe the good in people. I think eventually we'll hit a precipice where it will happen in some way, shape, or form. There's a neighborhood south of where I live that's all ranches. I drove by it the other day, and I was sitting in. It was interesting to see how some of the houses that are already built up, right? You could see like maybe some people moved in, took advantage of the appreciation, built a second level. But that's, I think, the freedom that you can give people. When you talk about like real estate building wealth, it's like, look, not only are they going to build that wealth within building equity, but hey, you save that money, you build that equity, put another extension on your house, add another $150,000, $200,000 in value to the home. And I think that's what I see as the natural progression of a neighborhood. Like you said, density. If I can create housing for 3-bed, 2-baths, or for middle class right now, in 15 to 20 years, a lot of those homes are going to probably be 4-bed, 2-baths, 5 beds, 3 baths, things like that naturally. And it's going to provide that outlet for people. At that sub 450 market, especially in central Jersey, you're buying an old home. Like you're buying a property that needs work. I mean, if it's new, good luck, because there should be 30, 40 people there ready to bid behind you. But it feels like it's calming down a little, right? I mean, I think within that 300,000 to 600,000 price point, it's still a little mayhem, but I just don't feel like there's as much chaos around that 600 to 900 price point. I just showed 4 yesterday. None of them had offers. And all are saying, hey, the seller's expecting ask or higher. And I was like, nice, we'll call you next week.
And it's fun. It's actually weird too. Sometimes we'll have that where it won't have offers, and then all of a sudden you get one, and then like 3 weeks in, and then other people offer, and you're in a bidding war 3 weeks later too, which is a strange thing. But there's it depends on which town you're in. It depends on where things are at. I mean, that too, like when you're talking about, if somebody wants to put an addition on with a HELOC, I always tell them, like, call us before you're going to do it, because we want to make sure that you're, not overdeveloping for the neighborhood, or you're not picking, wood floors, that the price per square foot doesn't make sense for the home. Like, let's keep the whole thing in line so that when you go to resale, you're really maximizing your ROI.
Yeah.
And then when you're talking about the 300 to 600, like a home that might need work, we have the loan products, which my wife and I have actually used one of them. We used the home style renovation loan on a property. So I'm familiar with how it works start to finish, but you can actually finance the construction costs. So if you take that property for 400 grand, you put 100 grand into it, it might be worth 600 at the end of it. And that's really like where you start adding value. And like you were talking about, if you think about your single family home and the way that those value add developers in opportunity zones and whatnot do, you start to really build wealth. And that's when the thing starts to steamroll.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what gives the people the power. And I think that maybe that's the struggle, right? You just don't want people to have that much flexibility. But at the end of the day, I love it. I mean, we just finished the renovation on our property that we purchased, same thing, did the renovation loan. And it made me realize, well, we bought an older home. I was like, even if I bought something new construction, I have friends, family who have purchased that way. You're still learning, whether it's new or not, how someone else did something, what they did in the process. And it made me realize that, like, as much as I would love something that's brand new, don't have to do anything to it, as a control freak, I'm like, I want to put the electrical kind of the way I want to, or I want to be able to situate the plumbing the way that makes sense for us. So it's nice to be able to have that kind of blank canvas type feel. And I think maybe the next step is building a home from scratch, but that's down the road.
Well, and I could tell you too, because I've built new construction that sucks. It's like you're in like an argument with your wife every night trying to decide what door hinges are going on 37 doors throughout the home. And you're like, it's just like, it's like weird. I wouldn't say you're in an argument with your wife, but like point being is like, you're literally sitting there like, do I want that doorknob or the one that goes like with a lever on it? Do I want, and then you're like, oh, now we need faucets. Oh, now we need the knobs for the kitchen cabinets. Now we need the knobs for the vanities.
It seems, I mean, developing blows my mind. I remember when in Brooklyn, you'd have someone who owns a lot and they'd be like, I want to build myself. And the first question I ask is like, have you ever built anything? Like, have you built a shed?
Yeah.
Because if you haven't in New York City, then good luck. You're not going to get it done. But it's a challenge. Like, I see it as like, if I can get a home or a property developed, I can pretty much do anything I would put my mind to.
Yeah.
Just with the amount of regulation and all that stuff, I do think that there's some pride behind doing that. But yeah, I mean, when we were doing our renovation, the funny thing was, the contractor would reach out to me and say, hey, what do you want to do in this aspect? And I just start a group chat. Here, my wife will choose. It's like, I just want to make sure that the choices are being made. I really don't care for the detail. But at the end of the day, it's like, when we're putting our touch on it, it makes her happy, it makes me happy. I can care less if they're chrome, gold, whatever the hell they are.
Well, she's definitely got a good eye for that too. And you know that you're going to screw that whole thing
it would
up.
be
You would order
a cave. It was up to me.
You would order everything that ruined the home's value.
Yeah. You would walk in and it would look like a jail cell probably. I mean, I remember my first apartment, I lived on my own. I had my bed on the floor, I had a desk, and I had a plant. That was all that was in my room. I mean, you would think I was homeless. But the interior just never, interior decorating doesn't really, I appreciate it, right? You walk into a space like, this is nice.
Yeah.
But I'm not the eye. I don't have that.
Just paint the cinder block black, put a 96-inch TV on it and a lava lamp next to it, and you're good to go.
Like high quality paint, there's spray paint down the block.
My boy can paint this.
Yeah.
My boy Vinny over. Cool. And then, so from there, election year.
Yeah.
And I'm hearing, you and I were both rapping about this. I'm like, I'm so fatigued by politics, I feel like at this point, so I don't even get into it. But I do feel like, from what's coming up with what our clients are asking about and whatnot, is assuming, and I don't know when this is actually going to air, but we're shooting it in June, but assuming if Trump and Biden are the two options, to me, it feels like Biden's going to continue to we're going to feel very similar to how we do today, which is fine. And we can all live in that way. And the way that, and I think that rates are going to, slowly come down over time or maybe stay the same. I don't feel like they'll go up. It seems like anytime we cross 7%, the consumer really feels it.
Definitely.
And we see traffic on our website slow down. We see lead count slow down. You can feel it as a real estate agent when you cross 7 that it gets there. But then if Trump were to come into office, I had a client that, I feel like it's safe to assume that he would want the rates to go down.
Yeah.
But I had a client say, well, what if he's not afraid of crashing an economy either.
Yeah.
So what if he takes rates and shoots them up to just rip the Band-Aid off this thing?
Yeah.
Because somebody like himself, he benefits from low rates given the amount of real estate he owns, but he also benefits from a crashing economy because he knows how to make money in that too.
Yeah.
So I think that's like, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I have a feeling like I said, if Biden stays in office, it's going to stay the same. If Trump goes in, something is going to change. I highly doubt he's
Yeah,
going
yeah,
to
and
keep it the same.
I personally think that we do need that kind of ripping a Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if you look at simple things like Uber, all these delivery apps, everything got so much more expensive, and it kind of like punched us in the face.
Right.
But that's because people borrowing money at such a low, like to $1 billion company, borrowing at 1, 2, 3% is nothing. Like
Right.
it's basically zero to them. But I've always said this. I mean, I love politics. I'm passionate about it. Whoever's president, like we're going to learn how to make money, right?
Yeah.
You just got to learn how to like swing with the punches. And I just hope that wherever we go as a country, like this brought us to social media before, just like a little bit more cohesiveness. Like
Right.
it just feels like that's one of the reasons why I've backed off. Like I still use social, but I'm off of it in terms of me managing my handle. Cause like you just get on there and it's just a nightmare after nightmare after nightmare. And when you get off of it and you walk down the street, and you talk to the person at the coffee shop, or you go meet a client, it's not like that. Right?
Yeah.
I have a funny seller now who's moving to Florida, and I always love to know why people got into the real estate and what's driving them out. And he said, I want to move back to America, so I'm moving back to Florida. And I laughed and I said, I'm like, I was born and raised in Jersey. I can't see, as much as I might disagree with some of the politics, it's really hard to see myself leaving the state. And I'm sure there's people like that who are like from Florida, Texas, California. But we'll see. I think hopefully whoever's president makes the right decision. And for me, it's the status quo now. Like I said, we're fine. We're making money. We're going to be able to make our way in the market. But it would be nicer to get a little bit less resistance from everything.
Yeah, we could have it. We know how to fight, but we can definitely, I wouldn't mind it a little bit easier. And that too is kind of like, what's great about Eric and on that lead gen aspect of things is and what he's talking about, like politically, when you're having conversations, I've known you for a while, it's like you might say something where you really believe you're leaning this way, and then you might say something right after that where it's like, oh, this guy's a man of the people too, and like you really are that true person who is more about doing what's right and like what works well for you and what works well for underprivileged people and everything versus needing to have that complete divide. And I feel like that's that oneness that you're looking for. But behind that, what makes it cool about Eckhardt and having him in our organization is because of that, he's a man of the people. You create a very comfortable environment for people to want to get out of their comfort zone.
Yeah.
And that's really where we've honed in, where now you're doing, is it Mondays and Thursdays, you have a live prospecting, coaching, training session where agents are invited in to get a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. There's my whole life I've thought about it, even from when I was young. I've always just liked to prove myself that I can do something.
Yeah.
And cold calling, like I still get weird about jumping on the phone and cold calling, but there's something exciting about like not knowing what's going to happen when that person picks up. And it's interesting, right? Like I can't think of doing this job with such monotone way. Like in the way I see it is like, if I had to build through my sphere, it just feels so predictable. It's like, oh, like, of course the people that know me would want to do business with me. But can I get that stranger who doesn't know me?
Yeah.
Which is the same thing. I can cold call my cousin or I can cold call the stranger. But yeah, I mean, I always, and I think this was my struggle when I first got into the career, is I really always wanted to help people. And when I took on younger agents, I probably poured in too much time from my side and I sacrificed my business a little. But when you see someone get it, when you see someone like do something that they can't do, like I'm starting to see that with my kids. I'm like, I want to be able to help people prove themselves wrong.
Yeah.
And in the cold calling, in the seeing something from a different perspective, I try to really reflect a lot. And that's why I feel like I change my mind on things. I don't want to be set in my ways. Like I have my principles, I have my values, but if you enlighten me, I'm going to think about that. And it's going to make me consider whether like, have you been thinking about this right the whole time, my man? But yeah, with the agents, if anybody listening to this, like if you struggle with that, it's just a matter of picking up the phone and calling. And I just want to be that win in their sales. Like I had a lot of confidence behind me with my first broker of record. And that was so helpful. Like I remember our first holiday meeting, I was dating my wife probably 4 or 5 years at the time. And he said, your husband's gonna make a lot of money in this business because of the way he can call on the phone. And I was like, damn, man, that's a lot of pressure. But I was like, he had like an unwavering confidence in me.
Yeah.
And I just want to provide that. Like there's nothing better. And look, you've built a team, you've helped us all be successful. I'm sure you feel that same thing. It's just a matter of like helping people change their lives.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like you, when you bought your first piece of real estate, I'm like, I always say that's what makes my heart sing.
Yeah.
When people are actually, I got into real estate because I wanted to own real estate. Um, it's crazy to me how many realtors don't own real estate.
Yeah.
And like, I just know that when you start, you know, you get the first, then you're looking at the second and you're adding value and you start to kind of roll from there. It just makes it so much easier to do your job because you're actually a part of the party that
Yeah.
you're trying to like sell. But I feel like that's a big differentiator when you're talking about that with other sales coaches, trainers, broker managers, whatever it may be, is they're trying to get agents to pick up the phone, but they never picked up the phone to do their job.
Yeah.
They were like married a builder, head of the PTA,
Yeah.
did a lot of farming that I don't know anybody who has it working right now on that side of things. Like crushed open houses, which still works in today's market. But there's nobody that I hear it so often where they're like, you know, we've literally had you go down to other people's offices
Yeah.
and fire their agents up and start calling with them. So there's a lot of trainers out there that aren't going to actually do what Eric's saying, you know, he's willing to do, and he does it with you. And I always say that's the difference is like, if you're talking from a militant standpoint, it's not like you're just behind a desk, like pushing buttons saying, go on out there, troops. It's like, no, let's party. We're going into battle.
Yeah.
Get on my back. I'll lead the charge. Let's rock and roll. And I think that that is something that the agent really feels the difference of. And that's why, you know, we're looking for more agents that want to come into that party. You know, so from that note, like if you're an agent that wants to feel what that feels like, it's an open door. It's like, come rock with us. You're always going to be in one of the offices, right? Or for the most part, or we might be on, you know, via Zoom, but it's about being prepared, knowing what you're going to call. And for me, I know you get a little more specific for it, but for me, I don't even give a shit what you call. Like, just pick up the phone, just talk to people, you know? And then from there, we're going to start building that muscle and we're going to get more into that, you know, that direct conversion of like what gets your, you know, what gets you selling more homes.
Yeah. I've always been a team player, and that's why I like doing those calls where we get everybody together, just because I don't like working at home by myself. I really don't enjoy it. I do it a little bit better now. But at the end of the day, I love being around people. I love like being in a bullpen, or if I have to go meet you at a cafe, like we'll bang on calls together. There's a camaraderie around, right? You're just like, you're not in it by yourself. And that's why we joined the team. Like I had that thought. I was working by myself, and I said to myself, my whole freaking life, I've been on a team. I've had other people to push me, or I've had like at least someone, they may not know they pushed me, but they provide me with like a bar to set. And I needed that. I was so hungry for it. Funny that you mentioned about buying real estate. Before I joined the team, probably a year before I joined the team, Goldfarb was taking me out. I saw a couple properties, 3-family on Madison Street in Jersey City. I probably should have bought it. It was like $425 at the time. It's probably worth $1 million now. And it needed so much work, and I just backed. I pussyfooted. I was like, nah, I'm not buying this. Like, this is crazy. And it was that. Like, I wasn't around anybody who had purchased. I didn't know who to reference, what to do, whether this was valuable. And yeah, it was that being around everybody, seeing like everybody on the team and like, boom, transacting. I was like, I'm doing this. Like, when I find the place that's mine, I'm doing it. But yeah, I think it would have been harder. I can't say I wouldn't have done it eventually, but it would have been way harder to do it had I just had that lone wolf approach.
And that's a perfect example too. If you're watching this and you're a realtor that does not own real estate, that's another reason you should reach out to us.
Absolutely, man. Like, at least your own home. But yeah, I'm already thinking like, I got Arthur crunch the numbers. Like, how much equity can I pull out? Like, we need number 2. But yeah, no, it's it also, I think it's like calling and getting that first appointment. You're just like, I could do this again. I could do this again.
I keep saying to Dan Spitz too, who bought his 3-family last year, and he lives in one of the units. I'm like, you know, he's talking about moving up to the upstairs. I'm like, just go buy another 3-family. Go move into the next one. Just keep moving and keep moving. I'm like, dude, you're young. You don't have kids right now. Like, just keep going, keep going. And we have like Anthony Barone, who just had a fantastic trip. But what was cool coming off of that, he had 6 properties go under contract in May, which was his best month ever.
Absolutely.
And that's like, we have agents that they're licensed in 2021. They're like newer to the business, and they're putting 6 properties in contract in 1 month. And then you have the complete divide of other agents out there, you know, that are just slowly sinking, you know? And for us, it's like, no, this is party time, man. Like you said, whatever happens from a political standpoint, we're good. We'll figure it out. We'll deliver the messages, NARBS, all that stuff. We'll have conversations with our clients, what that looks like for them. We're staying in front of it. We'll continue to pivot. And if there's, I always say, if there's one day that a robot's doing our job, then somebody's got to program it. So I'll figure that out too.
Yeah, that'll be fine with me, man. I'll have a bunch of robots selling a bunch of real estate for me.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on. What's the Instagram handle if people want to reach
The
out?
woke agent. We're reclaiming the idea of what woke means.
Yeah.
So it's not really woke, guys. So if you're
It's pretty
little right leaning, don't worry, I'm not going to scare you off. But no, I just want to inform people. Everything I learned, everything that I share is something that I'm literally going through that week, or have gone through, or an agent has gone through and have helped them get through it. So that like endless learning. Don't think things are obvious to everybody. It might be simple, but share it.
Yeah,
it's gonna help. It's gonna help somebody.
Cool. Appreciate you coming on.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Sweet.